Greetings and salutations, basketball fans. Akil Augustine bringing to you a very, very special edition of the Hangout Raptors Roundup. And I've got some special guests that are going to chime in. And first and foremost, I want to introduce this guy. He's the intrepid reporter. He's kept us up to date of recently. He's a rising star in our community. Brandon Gonez of the Brandon Gonez Show. He will be one of three. Number two coming in is Mark Stoddart, artist and the man responsible for the BLM campaign designed with the Toronto Raptors. And you know her and love her as a host and reporter for TSN, my girl, Kayla Grey. Guys, first and foremost, thank you so much for carving out some time from your schedules so that we can have this conversation and take this opportunity and this platform to talk about some things that I imagine are close to your hearts and, you know, they're close to mine. So let's jump right into it. Brandon, I'll start with you on this one. And we saw the story that I think it was one of the most compelling stories of the year in sports for Canadians, which was the Masai Ujiri altercation with the Alameda County Sheriff. And we saw a lot of Canadians from all walks of life, all levels of the country, really stand up and stand by Masai Ujiri. So my question to you is, as we can commend them for that, how does it feel for a Black Canadian, because I have my own views, to see your counterparts, white and Black and so on and so forth, stand up for Masai, but still understanding that, you know, there are a lot of real world circumstances and examples like that that don't even get any recognition over here?
Yeah, it's such an interesting case. And I would almost even say that it was the sheriff's, confrontation with Masai, because Masai didn't do anything wrong in that incident. And I think what's so interesting about this, and we heard it when Masai had his interview on CTV National News with Lisa LaFlamme, where he didn't even want any of this recognition. He didn't want anybody's support because he wanted to draw attention to the fact that this is something that happens day in, day out to everyday Black men and women across not just Canada, but across North America, in fact, across the world. But I think what's so important to highlight is the fact that for Masai, he was robbed of a moment that potentially may never be replicated. We're hoping and praying that it will be replicated. But again, it was a moment that he was robbed of because of this racist sheriff, who then went on a campaign to try to discredit what we know and what we all know is the truth in terms of Masai's perspective. But the other thing that we should also realize is that day in, day out, there are Black men and women who are robbed of their lives because of police brutality and discrimination. So I think what's so important, especially for our counterparts in the media, and for politicians and for anybody in high profile positions or any ordinary folks as well who have been watching this story unfold, is that this can happen and does happen to Black folks at every single level. Whether you're poor, whether you're rich, whether you live in a wealthy community, whether you live in a not so wealthy community, it happens. And it's a conversation that we need to continue to have, but also it's time that we find solutions because we shouldn't be seeing this happening any longer.
Now, Mark, I want to go to you because, I mean, you know, we live in the reality of Canada, right? And we see so many people come forth on Masai's behalf. But, you know, when I look at the way it's reported, you would think this was one of the first examples of a race-based altercation that you'd ever have happened with a Canadian before, right? And so we know stuff like this happens in the NHL and the CFL, but we've never really seen it reported on. So, you know, what's your impression of how we can, you know, kind of normalize this discussion?
That's a very good question. I think how to normalize it is almost what Masai did. He actually took the initiative of what has happened to him and allowed the organization to step forward and allowing us to speak our truth. And for him to do his whole campaign with humanity, he has also with the Raptors, with the Black Lives Matter campaign, he got myself and Amayemi involved and started creating art pieces for the team to wear. So seeing Masai going through this and taking the initiative and creating other platforms and creating the conversation, I give him kudos on that one because I didn't expect that. And allow the conversation to continue to grow even further and further for all of us to be a part of this conversation because it's not been talked about and creating a stronger platform for everybody to speak in an honest way. So and it's ongoing. We need more of this to happen for us to actually be, pushing the needle forward because this conversation is going to be ongoing. It's going to be continual. It shouldn't rely on just a moment, but a year in the way of that, not just Black History Month or I don't know where I'm trying to take it, but I just want people to realize that this situation we're facing is something that we all have to be a part of.
Now, Kayla, you were reporting on this situation in real time, so give us your perspective on how this played out.
It's tricky, right? Because I think we want to point out that it felt as though a lot of people were reporting on this because, as if it was for the first time, rather, because it was this exceptional human being, right? Masai Ujiri, someone everybody knows and loves. And what's tricky about that is, what about the people who you don't know? What about the people that don't hold that kind of status? How much space and conversation are you willing to make room for when it comes to them? Because as you mentioned, Akil, this happens every single day. I think also what kind of took me back as just being a Black person was, all this has been made of how gracious Masai was. Wow. He dropped the case. Good on him. He handled it so well. A lot of it has been in the ways in which we view the lens of how Black people police themselves after they are victims of racism, as opposed to those that do the racist things. And I think that that's also a thing that we have to have conversations about. Another thing that we should be talking about is believe Black people the first time. It should have not have taken a video in order for you to validate what happened in that moment. Keep in mind, there were plenty of people that had known that this happened and came out and said, well, we need to wait for more evidence. We see this, Akil, day to day, industry to industry in the workplace. And this is why we talk about workplace safety and why it's so important as it relates to Black employees. Is there is this sense of when we come forward with microaggressions, with bullying, with taunting, with things that people say to us on a day-to-day basis, our peers or those who may have more status than us in these spaces always say, well, we'll just have to wait. And that is how things don't get solved. So for me, it's about believing Black people the first time when they tell you these things happen. And then that is how we work into anti-racist workspaces, how we work into anti-racist environments. To cover it real time, you want the facts, but as a Black person, I got to tell you, just seeing how this was covered, the language around in which it was covered was a bit troubling for me. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of people don't understand is that when you, like, as an average walk of, everyday person, see someone who is, as you used a great adjective, exceptional, someone who rises above the norm, get this sort of treatment that you feel should be afforded to all those accused or accusers who don't get the benefit of the doubt. I've been in that situation myself, and so I like how Masai went about it, but I really, and this is why we take the moment now to put a lot of pressure on our peers in the media to, make this more of a norm where this isn't going to be the first time. This may have been the first time you have to report on a story like this, but you can become more nuanced as we get more examples of it. But that's that point. I want to give a huge congratulations to Masai Ujiri and the Toronto Raptors on their continued success, especially the Raptors 905, who was crowned the 2020 Franchise of the Year plug, as I am now working with them in their broadcast. But what I want to talk about is this whole concept of the G League. The 905 is part of it. And this team, of course, that Sharif Abdur-Rahim, a former Vancouver Grizzlies, kind of ushering in the G League Ignite. Now, this is an opportunity for the top-level prospects who have an opportunity to make money in the game of basketball, to kind of skip the NCAA or avoid going across to Europe and stay home and play basketball. Now, this is a huge opportunity, of course, but it's a risk in as of itself. Is this the future of basketball, Mark? I'll start with you. For basketball fans and aficionados watching the young players, or is this kind of like a flash in the pan for this special group of players? What do you think?
Not a flash in the pan. I think it's a great opportunity for young people to get paid. I think the talent that's grown from Toronto, even in the U.S., it's this whole process of going to college, doing the one and done kind of scenario, but now to realize that maybe I don't have to go to college and get an opportunity to go play a D League or maybe go overseas to play and get some recognition before going pros. I think it's a great opportunity, and I think that hopefully that opens up for more things to happen for young people. Because they do it in baseball, right? They see like young guys don't have to go through all these kind of process. They can go straight to the league. So this opportunity is a great opportunity. It's great to see, and hopefully that it stays that way or starts to become something.
Yeah, I like the shift in politics towards the sports that lend themselves to the black community because I think, I'm not really a fan of salary caps and how the black athlete's been treated in the mainstream. Kayla, your thoughts on this Ignite team, Jalen Green and Jonathan Kuminga, and what they could bring, and do you believe in it? Because you're a courtside reporter for the NBA. What do you think?
I mean, this is why you see me beaming. I absolutely love this. What Jalen Green came out and did was groundbreaking. What it does is it shows you the NBA is playing chess, not checkers, with the NCAA, right? So the NCAA has made their history in basketball of propping up young prospects, young athletes, and what? We get to tournaments where they make billions with a big B in money off of the backs of black people. What this does when you have athletes who go straight to the G League is it gives them a shot to then use their like list, to use their name, to use their product to get to the cash a little bit faster and to own their narrative and to not kind of buy into a system that was never built to make an athlete that stays in college but knows they want to go in the NBA and knows that they have what it takes to get into the NBA thrive. I love this. I also think that who should be paying attention is the Canadian market. This for us can be groundbreaking when it comes to the pipeline. When we have Canadian prospects, what do they head to the States for? They go to a prep school to just get into a D1 school. So they go to the States for that validation, that extra validation of kind of going to a highly sought after collegiate program. What this kind of thing allows is for Canadians to stay in Canada, stay in their high school program here, but then make that jump to kind of get into a transition phase to head to the NBA. So I think this is big, but it's the biggest for Canadian talent, as well as those in Europe as well.
Now, Brandon, this is not a concept unfamiliar to you, leaving the umbrella and moving on and breaking out to take a risk upon yourself, to bet on yourself, a la Fred VanVleet. So when you hear of concepts like this as a young entrepreneur yourself with Gonez Media, what's your impression?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea because it is providing that extra level of opportunity. And I think the more opportunity you can provide people, the better. And I think betting on yourself is obviously something that a lot more people are looking into because of the fact that these systems in place, they're not there to sustain us. They're not there to really amplify our talents. There are issues with the systems that are in place. At the same time, I also look at the reverse argument of this. And of course, a lot of people have their qualms about the NCAA. I have them as well. I agree with those qualms and those questions about how it's all structured. But I also do think it's important for athletes to get an education. I'm a strong believer in education because the reason is this, when you are an athlete, and every athlete can tell you this, there's always a risk factor. For example, if you break your leg, you injure yourself, that could be the end of your career, and what do you fall back on? So I always believe in equipping yourself with an extra side B. Of course, that is education. So if anything does happen, that you can fall back on something and then still be able to become something of yourself and still be able to use your talents in a different way.
And I do want to create a caveat here because I think a lot of people use that education pillar against the players sometimes, and I agree with you 100%, but I do think there's a lot of pressure that should be put on these schools because when you have a kid committing 30 hours a week to practice and to going to games and you're giving soft grades and soft classes, that education that you are claiming is worth the $50,000 to $100,000 that you're offering that kid isn't really the same thing. So Kayla, quickly, I want to get to the bulk of our show. I'm going to save some time for it, but the NCAA is going to try this new thing with the name and likeness. Does this stand a shot in the dark to fight what the upcoming trend of betting on yourself looks like?
It's cute, but let's all be very clear. The jig is up. And I think that you hit there with the education piece, Akil, is yes, education and options are important, but on whose terms and on whose timeline are you getting it on, right? It's proven, we've heard the stories of those who just had to get the passing grades by just showing up. So there's not really a push to encourage athletes to get full educations. And also, let's be clear, the G League does have that option for furthering your education as well. So it builds that bridge, it addresses that issue. The thing with likeness that I'm feeling right now is the NCAA had to. It was not morals, it was money. NBA players and NCAA players rather, and those coming into the system, let the NCAA knows that, we're going to get ours. the jig is up. We know what's going on here. And so this is the type of laws that we're trying to lobby for so that we can get our likeness. We know why when you go to a Duke game, the seats fill out. It's more than just sort of the accolades, it's more than just the banners hanging up, but it's who is there. Athletes announcing what schools they want to go to. This is how the NCAA builds towards tournaments so that they can get their money. So I think this completely takes back control. How we can kind of relate this to the real world is Black people have a great understanding of what ownership looks like and what ownership means to them. And I think that we need to be more encouraged to explore our options with that, because look at us, we create the culture, we push the culture, and what we do moves. So any ways that someone can go get theirs, I'm all here for.
All right, great segue to my final question, which is, guys, it's been a while since the George Floyd murder. And I want to know, because it was such a lightning rod moment in our culture, what's changed for you guys as Black creatives out there in your world, in your livelihood, in your relationships with sponsors and others out there? Has anything shifted with all the efforts that everyone's made? Mark, I'll start with you.
Honestly, I'm torn. There is change, slight increments of change, but I'm hopeful in the way that the conversation continues. It doesn't end on a February or March or April. It has to be a continual change of people talking about this. There's incidents in our past that we talk about, but we don't push the needle forward. So I'm hoping that through George Floyd, there is going to be another opportunity for us to have these dialogues of change, and again, having strong allies to be involved in helping us move this conversation in the way of having healing. Because at the end of the day, all of us are grieving our own different ways, especially with COVID happening. It's weird, but I'm hopeful that there's going to be another change in the way that all of us as a community can do better.
Yeah, and you make up a great point with COVID playing such a huge role in not only allowing us to sit and kind of get upset a bit longer, but also dampening our ability to get out there and get active. But Kayla, you're on the front lines, you're in corporate Canada. Your thoughts when you hear me offer up a question like this?
For me, I'm so proud and happy to see a lot of Black creatives getting their due, getting all these opportunities. But I also want to say, man, they've been here. Like, nobody just showed up. And furthermore, Black creatives have been knocking on the door for a very, very long time. So for me, kind of coming from a corporate lens, and also talking to other industries, I'm still feeling as though, Akil, straight up, we are framing diversity and inclusion through white lens. And that meaning that you could still have a corporation with, say, 100 people, and they think diversity is having 3 Black people in the building, when that is not the case. There's still fear of minority becoming the majority. And if you work from there, change is not going to come. I'm very hopeful. Sure, I could be a little bit different when it comes to my delivery, but I'm hopeful. But in order for change to come, we need to stop working with 6-month to 1-year plans, which is what we've been seeing from a lot of companies, is these PR statements and tangible items that have goals for what next year is going to look like. That's not going to make or move the needle much when we consider that systems have been put into place for centuries, right? It's centuries of work that's got us here. So for me, I'm not here for the reaction kind of items that people want to kind of hit with their numbers. I'm here for the legacy piece, the response. What does that look like? What does our industry look like in 15 years' time when none of us are a part of it?
I do believe that there is a shift that's happening. Do I think it's going to be permanent? I'm not sure yet. I'm hoping that it's not just going to be a trend. But I do believe that there are many companies, and we've been speaking with many companies here at Gonez Media, who are committed to this change. That's what they say to us. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. One of our mission statements for the Brandon Gonez Show is to amplify Black stories and voices. And we say that off the bat. And if you don't agree with it, then we're just not the company that you need to partner with. But here's the other thing that I also have come to believe and accept, that I'm no longer, and I don't believe we should any longer, ask for space. You have to believe people when they show you who they are. And if they show you time and time again that they don't care and they're not committed to this, you need to believe them. So rather than ask for space, in my own personal experience, I can only speak for myself, I said I'm going to create my own. And I'm going to create my own platform, and I'm going to set the narrative on my own terms, because I no longer have the energy to ask for that from companies who clearly have shown that they don't care. So rather than ask, create our own. And I think we as Black creators, as a Black collective, as Black people, and just people in general who have clearly have now seen that the world is not fair. If you can't agree with that statement, then I don't have time for you. I don't.
Thank you so much. I'll throw my 2 cents in the hat and say this. I want to commend each and every one of you guys, because I think for a lot of people, they think it's a foregone conclusion that Black people should fight for what they believe in terms of equity and equality and inclusion. But I think a lot of times they forget the rubber bands snap back. And I think that those people like yourselves, Brandon, Mark, Kayla, who go out there with your first and last name on your front and back and who say the things that need to be said for the culture to move forward, you offer yourself up and you put yourself in a position of danger and vulnerability, because we know that the centers of power in this country do not, agree with the sentiments, and that's where we're asking for the change to come from. So, it's my hats off to you guys, and that's why I made sure that you guys are the individuals that I shared this platform that I have with. I want to send a huge shout out to the Toronto Raptors and their front office for supporting what we are doing, but I want to make sure to thank you guys. So thank you guys so much for this very special edition of the Hangout. Do remember to check out the Brandon Gonez Show. Do remember to watch the Raptors on TSN. And do remember to go to Raptors.com and get your BLM Raptors gear created by our guy, Mark Stoddart. I'm Akil Augustine on behalf of Dwayne Sweets Watson, Ed, and the rest of the crew. We have brought to you this very, very special Hangout Raptors Roundup for the month of February, the year 2021. It's been an interesting one. Thank you. Love you. Keep balling.